The psychology of fear and power. Fear has been misunderstood for centuries. Most people are taught to run from it, to pray it away, to hide it behind politeness and people-pleasing. They are told that fear is weakness, that confidence means the absence of fear, that power comes from being liked. That lie has crippled more lives than failure ever could. Because the truth, spoken quietly by history's most powerful figures, is this: the strong don't avoid fear. They use it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this deeply. In The Prince, he dismantles the comforting illusions of morality-driven leadership and replaces them with something far more honest. Power is psychological before it is physical. People obey not because you are kind, but because they believe resistance is costly. Fear is not the enemy of power. Fear is the raw material of power. The question is not whether fear exists. It always does. The question is who controls it. Most people allow fear to rule them internally. Fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, fear of standing alone. And because of that, they surrender power externally. They shrink their voice. They soften their boundaries. They negotiate against themselves before anyone else even speaks. And the world senses it immediately. Robert Greene echoes this reality in the 48 Laws of Power, particularly in Law 1, never outshine the master, and Law 3, conceal your intentions. Power is not loud desperation. It is controlled presence. It is emotional discipline. It is knowing when to speak, and when silence does more damage than words ever could. Fear, when left unchecked, makes you predictable, but fear, when mastered, makes you dangerous. Let's dismantle something important right now. You do not command respect by demanding it. You do not command respect by explaining yourself. You do not command respect by being endlessly agreeable. You command respect when people sense consequence, not aggression, not cruelty. Consequence. Machiavelli famously posed the question, is it better to be loved or feared? And while his answer is often misquoted, the essence is clear. Love is fragile. Fear is reliable. Love dissolves the moment comfort disappears. Fear remains long after emotion fades. That doesn't mean terror. It means certainty. Certainty that crossing you has a cost. Certainty that your boundaries are real. Certainty that your presence is not to be taken lightly. This is where most people fail. They are terrified of being misunderstood, or terrified of being labeled cold, terrified of losing approval. So they over-explain, they over-give, they over-tolerate. And slowly, quietly, they teach the world how to treat them. Greene warns against this in Law 46. Never appear too perfect. But the deeper lesson is this: never appear too available. Availability erodes mystery. Mystery fuels authority. Power begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Read that again. Power is not loud. Power does not beg. Power does not chase validation. Power watches. Power waits. Power chooses. Fear is the gateway. When you stop fearing disapproval, manipulation loses its grip. When you stop fearing conflict, intimidation stops working. When you stop fearing abandonment, leverage shifts in your favor. And this is the line that separates the controlled from the controllers. The moment you stop fearing anyone is the moment everyone starts watching their step around you. Not because you threaten them, but because your emotional independence unsettles them. People are deeply uncomfortable around someone they cannot control with guilt, pressure, or approval. They don't know which buttons to press. They don't know how to predict you. And unpredictability, as Greene repeatedly emphasizes, is power. This is Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Notice the word terror here does not mean violence. It means uncertainty. It means psychological distance. It means people hesitate before crossing you because they are unsure of the outcome. That hesitation is respect. Now let's address the most corrosive habit of all, people-pleasing. People-pleasing is not kindness. It is fear wearing a friendly mask. It is the fear of rejection, the fear of isolation, the fear of being seen clearly and judged. Machiavelli would call this weakness. Greene would call it a strategic error, and life will punish it relentlessly. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you teach people that your time is negotiable. Every time you laugh at disrespect, you teach people that your dignity is optional. Every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, you train others to expect your silence. Power drains quietly, and fear is the leak. Here is the shift you must make. Stop trying to be liked. Start becoming respected. Respect is born when people realize you do not need them, but you choose selectively. Respect is born when your absence feels heavier than your presence. Respect is born when you are calm in moments where others are emotionally reactive. Fear fuels this transformation, but only if you turn it inward before projecting it outward. You must first confront your own fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing access. Fear of being seen as too much. Because once you conquer that internal fear, external fear forms naturally. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to announce power. Power announces itself through restraint. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn how not to be good when circumstances demand it. That doesn't mean cruelty. It means discernment. It means understanding that excessive softness invites exploitation. And Greene sharpens this further with Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. You don't reveal your strength up front. You let others underestimate you. You let them relax. You let them expose themselves. Fear is not always visible. Sometimes fear is planted after the mistake is made. This is strategic silence. This is delayed consequence. This is power without noise. And make no mistake, this is not about becoming heartless. It is about becoming uncontrollable. When you stop reacting emotionally, people project meaning onto your silence. When you stop chasing approval, people chase your attention. When you stop fearing loss, people fear losing you. That is the reversal. That is the psychological pivot. The strong don't avoid fear. They use it. They use it to sharpen boundaries. They use it to eliminate hesitation. They use it to strip away dependency. And as this foundation settles in, something shifts in how people respond to you. Conversations change. Challenges soften. Disrespect decreases. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped signaling fear. This is only the beginning. In the next phase, we will dissect how fear is projected, how authority is established without force, and how to take power quietly and strategically, without ever announcing your intentions. But before we go further, understand this. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is your teacher. Fear is your forge. And once you learn to wield it, the world no longer feels chaotic. It becomes responsive. If this message resonates, if you feel this shift happening already, subscribe to this channel now. What we're building here is not motivation for comfort, it's preparation for power. Projecting authority and removing leverage. Once fear no longer controls you internally, something subtle but irreversible begins to happen. People feel it before they understand it. Your tone changes, your pace slows, your reactions shorten, and most importantly, you stop reaching. This is where power starts to show itself. Not through volume, not through intimidation, but through absence of need. Robert Greene makes this unmistakably clear in the 48 Laws of Power, particularly Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Most people misinterpret this law as manipulation. In reality, it's about leverage. Whoever needs less controls more. The moment people realize you do not need their approval, their validation, or their cooperation to maintain your identity, that is the moment leverage shifts. And leverage is power. Machiavelli observed this centuries earlier. In The Prince, he emphasized that authority collapses when a ruler appears indecisive, emotionally reactive, or overly reliant on others. Dependence weakens perception. Independence sharpens it. Power is first felt, then respected. This is why people-pleasers never command authority. They broadcast dependency. They leak fear. They reveal their emotional pressure points before negotiations even begin. Every unnecessary explanation is a confession. Every rushed response is a signal. Every emotional outburst is intelligence handed to your opponent. Greene calls this out in Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is compression. When you speak less, your words carry weight. When you react slower, others grow uncertain. When you refuse to clarify immediately, people begin filling the gaps with fear, assumptions, and caution. This is not cruelty. This is psychological gravity. Let's dismantle another illusion. Authority does not come from confidence displays. It comes from control over fear, yours and theirs. Most people try to overpower fear with bravado. They speak louder. They dominate conversations. They assert constantly. That is insecurity screaming for reassurance. True authority moves in the opposite direction. It slows the room. It interrupts patterns. It disrupts expectations. The strong don't avoid fear. They use it. They let others feel unsure. They let silence stretch. They let tension exist without rushing to relieve it. Because whoever resolves tension controls the interaction. This is why negotiators who speak last often win. This is why leaders who pause command rooms. This is why unpredictable individuals unsettle stable hierarchies. Greene formalizes this with Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Predictability makes you manageable. Manageable people are never respected, only used. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. People constantly test you. Not openly. Not dramatically. They test you through casual disrespect, boundary nudges, subtle dismissals, delayed responses, half commitments. These are not accidents. They are probes. And how you respond teaches people how far they can go. Fear ruins most people here. Fear of conflict makes them laugh things off. Fear of loss makes them over-accommodate. The fear of rejection makes them stay silent. And in doing so, they fail the test. Power is not about passing every test with aggression. It's about failing none through submission. Machiavelli warned that leniency, when mistaken for weakness, invites rebellion. Greene echoes this in Law 23. Concentrate your forces. You do not respond to everything. But when you respond, it must be felt. The worst response to disrespect is emotional reaction. The second worst is passive tolerance. The most powerful response is controlled consequence. Sometimes that consequence is distance. Sometimes it is withdrawal. Sometimes it is silence followed by action. Never explanation. Explanation signals uncertainty. Uncertainty invites challenge. Power never argues for its existence. Let's talk about fear projection. Fear is contagious, but only when it is unspoken. The moment you threaten, you weaken. The moment you warn, you reveal limits. The moment you announce intent, you surrender surprise. Greene hammers this in Law 3, conceal your intentions. A person who cannot be read cannot be rushed. A person who cannot be rushed cannot be controlled. This is why calm unnerves aggressive people. This is why silence unsettles manipulators. This is why emotional neutrality frustrates narcissists. They rely on predictable reactions. When those reactions disappear, their power collapses. And here's the key shift. The moment you stop fearing anyone is the moment everyone starts watching their step around you. Not because you've changed your tone, but because you've changed your posture. You are no longer trying to manage perceptions. You are no longer trying to be understood. You are no longer trying to be safe. You become selective. Selectivity is dominance. Machiavelli taught that generosity must be rationed, not because kindness is wrong, but because excess devalues it. The same applies to attention, emotion, and access. When everyone has access to you, no one values you. When access is earned, behavior improves. This is not theory. This is observable reality. Watch how people behave around someone who responds slowly but decisively, never over-explains, walks away without drama, does not chase closure, does not fear being misunderstood. They tread carefully. They choose words. They self-correct. That is respect born from uncertainty. Now, understand this clearly. You do not need to intimidate. You need to remove comfort. Comfort breeds entitlement. Entitlement breeds disrespect. When people are unsure where they stand with you, they default to caution. Caution is respect in its earliest form. Greene calls this Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Presence is common. Absence is power. When you withdraw attention without explanation, the mind fills the vacuum, and what it fills it with is rarely flattering to them. They replay conversations. They question their behavior. They adjust. You didn't lecture. You didn't threaten. You didn't chase. You let fear do the work. This is what it means to take power quietly and strategically. No announcements. No emotional speeches. No confrontations fueled by ego. Just alignment between your boundaries and your actions. And once this alignment is established, something critical happens. You stop being reactive. You stop being rushed. And you stop being pulled into other people's emotional storms. You operate on your own timing. Timing is power. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors those who act decisively, but only after observation. Greene refines this with Law 35. Master the art of timing. Fear rushes. Power waits. Fear explains. Power acts. Fear hopes. Power decides. And this is why people who master fear don't just command respect. They reshape environments. Rooms adjust to them. Conversations recalibrate. Dynamics shift. Not because they demanded it, but because they no longer feared the consequences of standing alone. This is the core lesson. Fear is only destructive when it controls you. When you control it, fear becomes pressure on everyone else. Pressure that forces clarity. Pressure that reveals loyalty. Pressure that exposes weakness. And as this pressure builds, you gain something rare. Freedom. Freedom from approval. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from reaction. This is not dominance through force. This is dominance through self-mastery. And once you reach this level, the final evolution begins, becoming untouchable without appearing hostile. That is where we go next. If you're already seeing where fear has been leaking your power, drop your thoughts in the comments. Your awareness is the first sign of transformation. In the next phase, I will show you how to solidify power, protect your position, and command respect long-term, without ever raising your voice. becoming untouchable without hostility. There is a final stage of power most people never reach. They gain confidence, they earn respect, they learn to assert boundaries, but they still feel tension. They still feel challenged. They still feel watched. That's because respect alone is unstable. Respect can fade. Respect can be renegotiated. Respect can be tested when circumstances change. True power is different. True power is when people adjust themselves automatically in your presence, without you saying a word. This is not dominance through fear alone. This is dominance through structure. Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone. In The Prince, he makes a critical distinction. Power that depends on constant enforcement is weak. Power that is embedded in expectation is strong. A ruler who must always punish is already losing control. The goal is not to be feared today. The goal is to be anticipated tomorrow. Robert Greene frames this elegantly in Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. People respond not to what you claim, but to what you consistently embody. Power hardens when it becomes predictable in outcome, but unpredictable in method. That's the paradox. People should know what happens when they cross you. They should not know how you'll respond. This creates restraint without hostility. Now let's address something crucial. If you constantly assert power, you don't have it. Power that needs reminders is fragile. This is why emotional outbursts, public confrontations, and dramatic boundary-setting speeches often backfire. They reveal strain. They reveal effort. They reveal insecurity beneath the surface. Greene warns against this in Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Emotional volatility spreads weakness. Calm authority, on the other hand, spreads compliance. The most powerful individuals are not reactive. They are consistent. Consistency creates inevitability. When people believe outcomes are inevitable, they stop testing. This is how respect solidifies. Let's talk about hostility, because this is where many people lose ground. Hostility feels powerful in the moment. It feels assertive. It feels decisive. But hostility invites resistance. Machiavelli warned that hatred is far more dangerous than fear. Fear keeps people cautious. Hatred makes them patient, vindictive, and strategic against you. So the objective is clear. Be feared enough to be respected. Never hated enough to be undermined. This balance is achieved through restraint. Greene calls this Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others, not through persuasion, but through emotional positioning. People must believe cooperation with you is safer than opposition. This is where fear becomes background pressure, not foreground drama. You do not argue. You do not escalate. You do not threaten. You let patterns speak. Patterns are stronger than words. If every boundary violation is met with quiet consequence, if every act of disrespect results in loss of access, if every manipulation attempt fails without explanation, people learn, not consciously, instinctively. And instinct governs behavior far more than logic ever will. This is why the most powerful response is often doing less, not more. Less emotion, less justification, less engagement, but more alignment. Alignment between what you tolerate and what you allow. Alignment between your standards and your actions. This alignment is what makes you untouchable. Now let's return to fear, because at this stage, fear changes form. Earlier, fear was something you confronted internally. Then it became something others felt externally. Now, fear becomes something embedded in expectation. People don't fear you. They fear the outcome of misalignment with you. That is a critical distinction. You are no longer the enforcer. The system you've built enforces itself. Machiavelli would call this wise governance. Greene would call it strategic positioning. This is also Law 36. Disdain. Things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. Nothing unsettles people more than realizing they no longer matter enough to provoke reaction. When you withhold reaction, you deny oxygen. When you deny oxygen, fires die. And once people realize they cannot move you emotionally, they stop trying. That's when respect becomes permanent. Here is the shift that defines this stage. You stop trying to win interactions. You start choosing environments. Power is not just how you act, it's where you place yourself. Greene emphasizes this in Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous, but the deeper meaning is strategic positioning. You don't isolate, you elevate. You move into spaces where your standards are normal, not exceptional. When your standards become the baseline, power becomes effortless. This is why selective association matters. This is why access matters. This is why proximity is leverage. People who cannot respect boundaries lose proximity. People who challenge authority lose access. People who create friction lose relevance. No speeches, no confrontations, no drama. Just consequence. And remember this line. It is the culmination of everything we've built so far. The moment you stop fearing anyone is the moment everyone starts watching their step around you. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are unmoved. Fearlessness is unsettling in a world addicted to emotional leverage. Now let's clarify something important. Being untouchable does not mean being cold. It means being selective. It means you give warmth where it is reciprocated, loyalty where it is earned, access where it is respected, and nowhere else. Machiavelli warned against indiscriminate generosity because it creates entitlement. Greene echoes this with Law 25. Recreate yourself. You decide who gets which version of you. This control over self-presentation is the final layer of power. You are not fully known. You are not fully accessible. Or you are not fully predictable. And because of that, you are respected. At this stage, fear no longer feels heavy. It feels clean, controlled, purposeful. You understand it now. The strong don't avoid fear. They use it. They use it to protect their time, protect their dignity, protect their position. And once power is stabilized, something remarkable happens. Life becomes quieter. Less conflict, less chaos, less resistance. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And in the final batch, we will go even deeper. We'll talk about legacy power, how to lead without being present, how influence survives absence, how authority outlives confrontation. That is the final evolution. But before that, if this message sharpened your thinking, if it clarified how power truly works, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Batch 4 will bring everything together and show you how power endures. Legacy power, commanding respect even in absence. There is a level of power so refined that it no longer depends on proximity. You don't need to be in the room. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to correct behavior in real time. Your influence operates before you arrive and after you leave. This is legacy power. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest rulers were not those who ruled through constant force, but those whose systems remained intact long after decisions were made. In The Prince, he emphasizes institutions, reputation, and expectation. Because a ruler who must personally intervene in everything is already weak. A power that requires supervision is fragile. Power that governs itself is supreme. Robert Greene reinforces this idea throughout the 48 Laws of Power, especially in Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. Most people seek short-term dominance, winning arguments, asserting boundaries, proving strength. But true power thinkers design futures. They ask, what happens when I'm not here? How do people behave when they think I'll never know? What remains when emotion fades? Legacy power answers those questions. Let's be precise. Legacy power is not about fear of punishment. It is about fear of consequence, without confrontation. When your standards are known, when your reactions are consistent, when your boundaries are non-negotiable, people internalize them. At that point, you don't control behavior. People self-regulate. This is the highest form of authority, and it begins with reputation. Greene's Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life is not about image polishing. It's about predictable consequence. A strong reputation is not built on words. It is built on patterns. If people know, you don't tolerate disrespect, you don't reward manipulation, you don't explain repeated boundaries, you don't bluff, then your reputation does the work for you. People warn each other. People adjust preemptively. People behave differently before interaction even begins. That is power without effort. Now let's address a common misunderstanding. Legacy power does not mean constant severity. In fact, excessive severity weakens legacy. Machiavelli warned that cruelty must be measured and final, not habitual. Greene echoes this with Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. Why? Because unpredictability in principle creates instability. Unpredictability in method creates respect. Your principles must be unwavering. Your execution must remain opaque. People should know what you stand for. They should never know exactly how you'll respond. This balance creates long-term obedience without resentment. And now, we come to the most important transformation of all. You stop reacting to individuals. You start managing systems. You don't argue with disrespectful people. You remove incentives. You don't correct manipulators. You limit access. You don't chase loyalty. You observe behavior under pressure. Systems eliminate emotion. Systems remove ego. Systems scale power. This is how leaders, rulers, and strategists operate. Fear plays a role here, but it is refined. Earlier, fear was raw. Then it became controlled. Now, fear becomes institutional. People don't fear you. They fear what happens when standards are violated. That is the difference between tyranny and authority. Tyranny needs presence. Authority survives absence. Greene captures this perfectly in Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. But the spectacle at this level is not drama. It's consistency. People watch what happens to those who overstep. They remember outcomes. They adjust. Stories spread faster than rules ever could. And once stories spread, your power multiplies. Now understand this clearly. Legacy power is quiet. It is boring. It is almost invisible. And that's why it's unstoppable. People obsessed with dominance burn out. People obsessed with respect get challenged. People obsessed with control lose control. But people obsessed with structure endure. Machiavelli wrote for rulers, but his lessons apply everywhere. In business, in leadership, in social dynamics, in personal life. Wherever humans gather, power emerges. The question is whether you wield it consciously or surrender it unconsciously. Now let's bring everything together. At the beginning, fear controlled you. You feared disapproval. You feared conflict. You feared standing alone. Then you learned the truth. The strong don't avoid fear. They use it. You stopped people-pleasing. You stopped explaining. You stopped negotiating your boundaries. Fear shifted outward. Then you stabilized power. You became consistent. You became selective. You became unmoved. Respect followed. And now, legacy. Legacy power means you don't chase relevance, you don't correct every mistake, you don't attend every battle you choose. Choice is the final signal of power. Machiavelli would tell you this: a ruler who cannot walk away is not free. Greene would add, the ultimate victory is not defeating others, it is outlasting them. And this brings us to the final truth, one that most people never hear. Power is not about domination. It is about freedom from fear. When you stop fearing people, systems replace stress. When you stop fearing loss, clarity replaces anxiety. When you stop fearing isolation, strength replaces dependence. And that is why this sentence matters more than any other in this entire message. The moment you stop fearing anyone is the moment everyone starts watching their step around you. Not because you demand it, and not because you threaten it, but because your presence has weight, and your absence has consequences. This is not motivation. This is initiation. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are shaping it. Quietly, strategically, permanently. And that is how fear becomes power.